Good morning and welcome. Welcome to the Auto Hub Show. We're talking about a hot topic in auto. We did a show on this before in a similar way, so I'm sure it's not shocking anybody, but technicians are a challenge in 2026 in the industry. Doesn't matter what side of the industry, whether it's RVs, motorcycles, power sports, power products, boats, or cars. So I thought we would talk a little bit about retaining technicians, which is a little bit easier than attracting them or finding them sometimes, but also it's a great strategy as we look at it. That's also true with retaining customers as well versus trying to conquest new ones. But anyway, we'd like to start with, I think we're going to start with Stephanie this morning, if that's okay with you, Stephanie. Introduce yourself and what do you think the best way to retain techs is in 2026? And good morning.
Good morning, everybody. And thank you so much, Ian, for having me. Well, my career's really been focused on helping people perform at their highest level through learning, leadership development, and sales enablement. I've spent more than 2 decades in automotive, building training programs for OEMs, dealerships, and technology companies. And I'd say that one thing has become incredibly clear. People don't leave industries, they leave experiences. And I think the best way to attract technicians in 2026 isn't with a bigger hiring budget. I mean, I know we hear a lot of people in the tech world say, you know, it's money, it's money, it's money, it's money. And I'm sure that is hugely important. That's what people show up to work. You know, they need to eat and feed themselves and they want to feel valued. But I do also think it's by creating a workplace that's worth talking about. I think today's technicians are evaluating dealerships in a much different way. The same way customers evaluate businesses. They're asking, will I learn? Will I earn? Will I be respected? Will I be seen? Will I be valued, appreciated? Do I have a future here? And I think the dealerships that are going to win in the future, or that are winning today, because some are really getting it right and doing it right, invest in modern technology, modern equipment, continuous technical training, career paths, mentorship, competitive pay, flexible scheduling when possible, and leaders who actually coach instead of simply manage. I think the technician shortage isn't really just a recruiting problem, just a hiring, a pay problem. It's a leadership opportunity for us.
Fantastic. Mr. Aric, is that how you pronounce it?
That's how you pronounce it.
Okay,
Yes,
I just never seen it spelled that way. But anyway, go ahead, Aric.
Thanks, Aric Savage. I spent over 3 decades in the automotive industry as a fixed operations director. I'm COO of Prosidium Warranty Capital now, and moved out of that space. But one of the things that was really beneficial for me to learn being in the dealership in that role was right along the lines of what Stephanie said. I mean, she hit the nail right on the head. It comes down to what kind of locker room do you have? You know, you have professional sports, and is your locker room one that other teammates or that other teams envy? Or is your locker room just, you know, ho-hum? And so how you attract those and retain those technicians is exactly what Stephanie's saying. It's the experience, it's the manager, and it's those opportunities that you're going to give to that technician to not just stay stagnant, but to continue to move. So if you have the greatest technology, that's important, and that's a good start. But then you also have to have that continuing education. You have to have that opportunity for them to excel. And you have to also, one last thing that I don't want to forget is removing barriers to entry. And I know we'll probably talk a little bit about that, but barriers to entry for technicians, that's one of the reasons that we have a shortage, is that to get into that industry under the current design is very, very difficult. It's a huge investment for somebody that doesn't have a lot of money, and we need to find a way to get them into that, maybe like other trades in the States.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking to Jack Hollis, former COO of Toyota Motor Corp, about this problem Peter, maybe you can comment a little bit on that, and then I'll jump to Joe.
Yeah, well, we were talking a little bit about that, and mainly it revolved around the environment. And I think Stephanie hit the nail on the head about creating that environment. It's about building a workplace where the people feel valued. And one of the things that came away from that conversation was the Apprentice program. And I know Stephanie mentioned it a little bit with mentorship. We're also losing a lot of technicians. A lot of our, top level technicians are coming up to the retirement age, but they're also, being a technician is very hard on the body. It's a very physical job, as we know. And I don't think the dealers sometimes realize that. These guys are getting older, they're getting tired, but they have a wealth of knowledge that they have. And I love stores that are actually developing these apprentice programs, because now they take somebody who was probably planning on retiring and they can keep him as part of the team for another 4 to 5 years. Because now he's not turning a wrench, he's managing a team of younger, apprentice technicians that he's teaching, he's working. And I was visiting a store once, and I love what they did. They actually paid the trainer an override on his whole team. And what I found when I was talking to him, he said one of the things that he spends most of his time is going around to his other people that he's overseeing and making sure that they're efficient. And dealers always love to hear about the efficiencies. So it's a way to keep the technicians that have that skill set longer at the store, but also to train up the younger generation so they actually have that knowledge. So I think that's very important.
Thanks for that. Joe, tell us a little bit about you and what do you think about retaining techs?
Well, thank you for having me, guys. I'm the founder of Act Auto Staffing. I've got about 3,000 dealers across the country that I help find personnel. Used to be that I would help as much in sales as well as technicians. However, we've been wandering around the woods for the last few years, and now the average vehicle is 12.6 years old, which is a tremendous fixed ops opportunity. So just exactly what Peter was talking about, let me give you some statistics that are very important. So in 2025, we gained about 385,000 new technicians that were in there, but we lost 376,000. So let's distill the gain versus the loss. And it's good news that there was a little bit of a gain, but still, when you look at the different levels of technicians, you've got A, B, C, and of course, D. Now, of those people we lost, what percentage was the A and B? Most of them. So when you get these young people in, those are more your C and D. And, and they're expected to turn around and become, B's and A's real quick. And that's one of the biggest problems there. I always refer back to a lot of what Wrenchway and ASE are putting out there. It's tremendous information, and I'd be glad to give people links to their articles that are talking about this. But, still, in order to be able to keep these guys and to attract it, it's going to have to take, higher pay. And here's some of the reasons. So the average technician makes about $50,000, and then they have to buy tools. Okay, I looked it up just yesterday. HVAC average that's your home air conditioning and heating, they make $60K. An aircraft mechanic makes $78K. A plumber makes $70K. Those are people that don't have, in my opinion, as much skills as an A or a B technician. So it's there. So let me game this out a little bit, because I think this is interesting that's there. I put a shock collar on everybody a couple, 3, 4 years ago, because I said, our average door rate's going to have to be $200 to support these people. Well, I'm going to turn around and say that 2 or 3 years from now, it's going to have to be $300 for to try to hold these people in. And one of the biggest problems is, of course, is flat rate. That's in the new report, like I said, that came out. They talked about how bad it is and what it does. So more and more of the technicians that are in the business or that come in are interested more in salary or hourly plus production bonuses, which certainly make there. But, you know, the warranty times are another big factor that are hurting when it comes to dealerships because, you know, they're getting tighter than a pair of jeans at a barbecue place because it's just becoming a big part of it. So, and you know, there's ways to get past the uncompensated times, which is where flat rate comes in. That's where a technician has to pull a car up on a lift it, make an estimate. The customer declines, puts it back down, puts it back together, in, out, back and forth. You know, diagnostic fees never pay for that. A lot of the stuff that they do on a daily basis, I can't tell you how many times I ran to my technicians and said, look, do me a favor, you know, just put this radio back in or whatever. And we ask them that constantly, and that makes a big difference. I've got dealers that recognize that, and they have some great stuff. Again, I'd be glad to share it. One of my dealers automatically pays all of their technicians 25% more on any warranty. They also add a $2 flat rate quarterly bonus. They do $1,000 extra vacation, you know, after they've, you know, been there and qualify for vacationing. So that's a big retention that's there. They also pay their technicians for off and on lifts and some of the others. They also have, some of my dealers have parts people that actually deliver the parts to the stall so that they don't have to go in there. So, and, you know, back to what Stephanie was talking about, believe it or not, in the survey, they still mostly want a 5-day, 40-hour week, but they don't want to work weekends. Not far behind that, though, Stephanie, was the 4-day, 10-hour week. So in summation, like I said, we're just going to have to keep moving that door rate up to be able to keep these guys in it, remembering what I outlined with these average others. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thanks for that. I guess, Stephanie, you're doing stuff on the training side. Am I correct?
Yeah. I work for a company called Rocket, and we do a lot of great training, and we work with some of the people that you guys have mentioned here today, like Wrenchway. We have a lot of really great soft skill training for technicians and have worked closely with tech schools. So yeah.
Do you also do training for like service managers or dealers on compensation? I mean, obviously there's been lots of talk about compensation, but is there like pros and cons that you would compare on like flat rate versus salary, or how you pay a senior tech versus a regular tech? I mean, do you get into leads there at all?
We don't really dive into that area, but we do definitely train for leadership in dealerships, including in fixed stops. That is definitely something that we do more soft skill stuff, and how to encourage your teams and how to listen to your teams. But I do definitely agree that leadership really does need to listen closely to and just be aware of what's going on internally with your team. Everybody's different, right? Some people are motivated by money, strictly by money. Some people are motivated by a flexible schedule and would do anything to have a flexible schedule. So it's really about like leadership understanding the makeup of your team and what everybody needs. And that's what we kind of train on, is making sure you know your people, that you're listening to your people, that you're meeting with your people, that you're hearing your people, making them feel seen and heard. And I really do think many dealerships genuinely appreciate their technicians, right? But appreciation and feeling heard are two very different things. And that's where we kind of try to bridge that gap and train leadership to understand that technicians, I mean, the technician is the customer experience, right? Like when you think about it, when you dive in deep, they really are the customer experience. They're solving incredibly complex problems like we were talking about here, like involving software, ADAS, EVs, connected vehicles and diagnostics, like, yet they're often the last people asked how to improve workflow. They're the last, like when you think of, in my world, learning and development, we train everybody. Like, in dealership, trainers will go in and they're training sales and BDC and they're training leadership. We just forget about the technicians. Like, they don't even need any learning and development. Like, they don't want to grow and develop. And I think a lot of the best dealerships really do take the time to individually understand where technicians need help. What's slowing you down? Asking those questions, right? What's slowing you down? What tools are missing? What do you need? Which processes create frustration? What training do you want? Where do you want to go in your career? What motivates you? I think when technicians really feel heard, engagement is going to increase. And when they don't, they leave. Listening has become the new retention strategy, right? If you want to retain people, you have to listen to them.
Yeah, I mean, there was a picture I saw, I think it was on social years ago, where they had like MVP banners in the different service bays, which I thought was really interesting.
I love that.
Of the different technicians. And I agree. I worked years ago for a company called Dealer Fax that got bought by Snap-on. And that the training the techs was always challenging because nobody really talked to them all that much. So they were kind of like, what are you doing here? I'm busy. So it was kind of interesting. It was kind of interesting when you're doing training versus like a service writer or service manager. But what do you think, Aric?
I think that there's exactly what Stephanie's saying. There's a lot that goes into managing technicians. One of the things that was really important to me was take the techs out to dinner. Just a private dinner. You take them out to dinner. You get them away from the dealership. You get them. Hey, maybe you take them with their spouse or their significant other, and you just have a conversation and allow that conversation to be led where they want to go with it. I can't tell you how many surveys I did, and the electronic survey style versus the sitting down and having a dinner, and you really gained a lot of knowledge from them. And sometimes hearing from their significant other is super validating to them. Hey, I don't see my spouse because they're always at your store. They're always at your dealership. Wow. And Junior's got a baseball at 4:00 and he's always at your place of work and he loves his job and he wants to keep his job. But how do we make both happy? And some of those were the most revelatory things, but then acting upon those. And to what Stephanie said earlier too, it depends on each technician. They're not all the same. And their job has changed so much over the years as well. I mean, when Joe says, hey, just put this radio in, and I think about when I started in the car business over 30 years ago, the type of work they're doing then versus the type of the work they're doing now. And we need to really evaluate what's important to them. And maybe flat rate doesn't work in most scenarios anymore because you're asking a technician not only to pull out and disassemble an automatic transmission, which they've done for 100 years, but now we're asking them to do complex diagnosis on CAN systems in a vehicle that has 4 or more screens that all interface with each other and 40 to 140 different modules. And so they have to be an electronics expert, they need to be an electrical expert, and all of these things. So their job has changed and each one of them is a little bit different. But again, kind of going back to that, I think the most important thing when listening to a technician is listening to what they want and also what their family wants, because they're providing for their family with this job. And we need to know what the needs of the family are at the same time so that we can meet those needs and really truly retain that person. That person won't forget that. They just won't.
Fantastic.
The one thing about listening to is a great point. I spent a lot of time last year visiting dealerships around the country. I was working on a project and I was going into looking at fixed operations. And I found it interesting when I was talking to the different people throughout fixed ops, the one person consistently across the dealership, every dealership I went to, that knew more and was able to share more information than anyone else in the dealership was a parts manager. I thought that was kind of funny. I started looking at that. But if you can sit down with your parts manager, dealers, if you're listening to this, I recommend sit down with your parts manager and ask him what's going on back in the shop. He's going to tell you what service advisors are doing a bad job, which ones are going to do a great job, where there's problems with technicians, and this is all about technician retention. If you want to find out, because when those technicians show up at the parts counter, they're there chatting, they're talking, they're having a problem, they're going to share. And that parts manager sitting back there, and he's hearing everything's going on there. He's a great resource for you to have a pulse on what's going on in your dealership. So I highly recommend you take some time and take your parts manager out to lunch and say, hey, give me the lowdown on what's going back in the store, back in the shop. What do we need to fix? Who's unhappy? Because we do not want to lose the technicians. And it's a great way to get that insight.
100%. I mean, when you look at the parts department, I know that's even more ignored sometimes than the service techs, because it's kind of in the back somewhere and no one really talks to them. But yeah, they do have definitely a pulse on what's going on, because they touch technicians probably as much or maybe even more than actually the service writer or service manager. Joe, what do you think on listening to technicians and how dealers are doing there?
But I want to share one experience that, I've had this experience many times, and talk about retention. And when we get into this, we're of course talking about A and B techs that are really knowing their business. They're making good money. They are going to be in the $100,000 to $200,000 range. There are those technicians. I've talked with them. I've seen their pay slips when I have to talk to them about recruiting them, etc. And almost every single one of them that I said is, okay, I'm looking at your pay slip. By the way, are you taking full advantage of your 401k and your HSA and this and that? And they're like, what are you talking about? My God, the government's taking half your money. And I actually had one technician say, you're right, Joe, but he says, I'm making so much money, I don't care. So if somebody, and I actually helped that gentleman understand that if he started participating in the dealership's 401k, that they matched money, they didn't, that he got a tax break and all that stuff, and how it grew. And, that's another part of retention that's very important that a lot of people don't talk about. And of course, that's going to be all your big producers there. A lot of them came from, one of the great things about the car business is that nobody says, well, how many degrees do you have and what school did you go to? It's more like, here's the job, and then as you accelerate, you accelerate. So a lot of people do not come from any type of financial backgrounds, and they don't understand that part. So I think that's an important part of, your high producers, to get with them as far as retention.
100%. So, obviously the other thing that we probably want to talk about is local trade schools. I know we talked, I think it was it Virginia, Peter? I think it was Virginia we were talking about, or West Virginia. They had some program with tools, but how can dealers have a better relationship with sort of their local trade school, or where they train techs, or maybe even look at people that from military service or other industries who maybe want to get into the car business, who maybe are taking training as part of that exit from that former career. Why don't we start with Aric on this? What do you think?
They're absolutely essential. Coming from a dealership where we grew all of our technicians, that was the best way. Trying to find a technician on the open market is a little bit like finding a needle in a haystack, no pun intended, but I mean, it's really, really difficult. And you have to roll the dice a lot of times. You got to remember that person is getting maybe favored by many different shops in the area. So growing a technician was absolutely essential, and we're trying to remove those barriers to entry. So we had tried those tool programs in the past. One of the things that was really successful was a scholarship program. And this scholarship program funded each one of these technicians the amount that they would pay for their schooling. So let's say that their 2-year schooling was $20,000. So we as a dealership would set up a payment schedule, and we linked it to how many years they would stay. And what we found is once technicians made it past that 3-year mark, they were part of the family. And so we set up their payment schedule to reimburse them this money, and they could use it for whatever they wanted to, for schooling, for books, for tools, and they could see that money coming in while they were going to school. And then at the same time, when they graduated, they'd see that high increase of maybe they were adjusting the flat rate and they need a little extra boost. This would actually provide for that in those first 3 years of flat rate, a substantial amount. It was $300 to $500 a month on top of what their flat rate was. And so it would be a little bit extra money in their pocket. The other thing that's super important to trade schools is when you partner with them, and you need to have a good program at the dealership for the technician to learn. If you just say, hey, go to school, and when you're here, we're going to throw you on the lube rack, or we're going to have you do odds and ends, that's not going to create a great technician. Great technician is you take the guy like we had, who is 70 years old, I kid you not, still turning wrenches, or 60, and they have the most amount of knowledge, and they can pass it down. It's almost like working with grandpa on the car and letting him share all of that knowledge and that ball of twine that he's had in his toolbox since 1970 to educate this young person on, or this person is changing careers, to educate them on how they can be, best be a technician, on all the shortcuts, all the things that they've learned over the years on how to not only improve their flat rate skills, improve their communication skills, but again, that trade school is super important to have a good relationship with them. So you gotta remember, they're recruiting people for their program. And we would have these great relationships with them. And so when we would go to the trade school and say, we have this scholarship program, who do you think got the best technicians and the best people when they would recruit? We did. They'd say, hey, go check out this dealership because they have this scholarship program, and get on with them and have an opportunity to have your education paid for. So for us, that was absolutely essential and probably the most important thing that every shop can do. But it's an investment, right? It takes some money and it takes some time.
Yeah, we had a comment from a tech.
For a second, Ian.
Well, we had a comment from a technician from LinkedIn. He said, "How can you do a show about technician retention and not have one on the panel to talk?" So, I thought that was a good point. So I think we'll do a technician show where we have just technicians on soon, just to let you know. But go ahead, Peter.
Well,
what
Ian, you have one of them on because I pulled my transmission out just Sunday. So
there you go.
I just don't do it full time anymore.
Fair enough.
Body can't take it. Let me just make a quick touch on this, on trade schools and entry level people. I don't know if everybody knows this, but just recently there was a tremendous amount of money that was given to ASE for their new program. It's called Technician in a Box. And what it means, and I can give everybody links to it. What happens is if your shop qualifies, they're going to pay you $3,500 for every technician that you hire that is of a certain level, as long as they stay there for the 120 days or the parameters that are involved in that. So right off the bat, that's a big part that a lot of people don't even know. I try to announce it out in all of my emails that I send to employers as well. Here's the other part that I find just baffling. We see more D and C level technicians submit their resumes than anything else. Unfortunately, what happens is the dealerships call me and they go, Joe, I need an A technician or I need a B technician. Okay, well, why don't you also look at some of these C and Ds to build your band? No, I just need, it's amazing. And where most of my people come from with the resumes that are in the D and C levels are they're Valvoline fast lubes. They're, Walmart technicians. They're all these, and they've been in the business already 2 or 3 years. They have their tools. They understand, the environment, because the environment is what blows them out for people who are the beginners. They come in and they think, okay, I'm going to trade school, so automatically I'm supposed to, be better, and they don't. Like I said, they try to rush to the next level and they get blown out. These people that come from these areas are just filled with enthusiasm because they like cars. They're in a fast-paced environment. They've seen cars and trucks come through with tires, wheels, lubes, alignments, all that type of stuff. And so I just think it's crazy that so many people haven't picked up on that resource. And it's real easy. Anybody who is interested they can email me and say, how many do I have in my area? And I can immediately send them that information.
Thanks for that. I got a quick message from our sponsors. Here we go.
If you look at the last 4 years, Ian, we've answered 41 million phone calls for dealers over the last 4 years with our AI platform. We've also handled over 150 million text messages. And so when you look at just those raw numbers, that's a 4 to 1, 3.5, 4 to 1 text to phone call. So I don't know. Here's what I can tell you though. I believe that the customer wants to be met where they are presently. If that is text, voice, video call, if they want to be engaged and engaged instantly.
I'm Vince Delmonico, General Sales Manager with Cruise Ford Lincoln. Larry Feldman came out and did one of our training courses. Absolutely incredible. I sat through the course myself. The engagement that our salespeople gained from it, the excitement that he brings, it was a new way of looking at things that we're already doing and how we can improve them. Love it. It's literally the best thing since sliced bread.
My name's Fareed Ahmed. I'm the founder and CEO of DSMA. So why should you use DSMA to sell your most valuable asset? The answer is very simple. It's our unparalleled approach to our clients' needs and satisfaction. Remember, DSMA, we're real people doing real deals.
Meta, Instagram, social, and your team is still waiting for ups like it's 1999. Let's be honest. Your market isn't watching TV commercials. They're double tapping and engaging with your competitors on social media posts. People are shopping these days for cars and servicing their vehicles in between watching cat videos.
Hey, we have more tech input. So obviously we got to do a tech show there. Here we're going to have lots of techs on all at the same time. So that should be interesting. Tech input, currently online technician. So yeah, I agree. The technicians should definitely have input. Larry, did you want to comment on feedback from technicians, seeing that you talked to a few of them? I don't know if you have the time. You're muted. I guess not.
Yeah,
there you go.
Listen, it's people don't realize what an unbelievable asset they are, and they have to be nurtured. And you have to be careful and mindful of what work you give them, how you give them, because I'll tell you what, they're harder to find, they're expensive to replace, and you lose a tremendous amount when you don't consider them the asset they are. It's like everything else. There's got to be communication and some appreciation.
So what do you think the dealers are doing incorrectly in terms of retaining technicians?
Well, it starts with the fact that most dealers don't appreciate fixed operations as much as they do a variable, which is a ridiculous mistake, because one change in a factory or a program or what vehicles are available, and all of a sudden you realize what your mainstay is always going to be fixed operations, no matter what brand you're selling. So the focus should be on that, and there should be more attention paid and more advertising and more training. And you know what, I'm a freaky, and for always saying any dealership that doesn't have sales service meetings to pull everybody together is making a drastic mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously technicians, if they love what they do, they love their job, and they like their employer, maybe you could ask them for a referral, maybe someone they know who maybe isn't happy somewhere else. I mean, technicians.
Particularly since techs tend to hang around with other techs. It's an easy resource.
You mean they're not hanging out with the salespeople on the other side?
They don't like the salespeople, and the salespeople don't like them. Another stupid thing about our industry.
The other thing, talking about that, is if you create an environment where the technicians feel appreciated, they're happy, they're recognized. I loved whoever mentioned the banners. I've seen several dealerships you walk in and you see the banners with all the recognitions of the technicians. When they're talking to one of their friends who's a technician and he's in another store and he's not happy, he's going to say, look, you need to come over here. And then if you want to go one step further, put a bonus on where if you're able to recruit a friend to come to the dealership and he stays, give them a $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 bonus. Put a number out there that's going to give people a reason. But before they're going to go recruit their friends to come work there, they've got to be happy with where they're working. But that's a great way to do that. So I like that idea.
So what's your thought, Stephanie, on referral bonuses, on some way to drive that, say, to Joe's point, the senior techs to recruit other senior techs that maybe aren't happy where they are?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, it's not just because referrals fill positions, but great technicians, like you were saying, no great technicians. You know, your best employees become your best recruiters, and your referrals often stay longer. They onboard faster. You know, they fit the culture better because, you know, it's one person who says, oh, you'll be perfect over here. You're a perfect fit over here. Like, I'm happy. You're my bud. I know you're going to be happy. They cost less than recruiting firms, right? Because you're just a referral. So why not pay somebody for it? The key is making the referral program meaningful. And I totally agree with Peter. Like, reward employees when the technician starts, or reward them again after they stay for 90 days. You know, reward them again after 1 year. You know, now you've aligned incentives around retention, not just hiring.
Love that one. What do you think, Aric?
And
On
then,
retention?
you know,
Oh, go ahead.
Let me throw in the other thing too. I just want to throw out one of our clients, Freed. He's talking about, you know, one of the challenges when he's involved. He does all the buy sells at the dealerships. He's one of the big brokers out there. But a lot of times, if a dealership is being purchased in your local market, dealers, think about this. If a dealership that you find out is being bought, especially by one of the big ones, you know, that's a great opportunity. And I know people are going to probably, you know, come after me for saying this, but it's a great opportunity to poach technicians. Technicians are very loyal. They will stay with the dealership because they like the dealership, they're there. But all of a sudden, another big company comes in and takes over, there's always a turnover there. So it's always a great opportunity. So if someone's coming in, and there's a lot of dealerships being sold today, so it's a great opportunity for those local dealers. If you've got one of those big boys coming in and trying to pick up some stores in your area, spend some time. Maybe reach out to some of those technicians over there. It's a great way to go find and pull in some good technicians.
Thanks for that. Aric?
Two things. First, make it a place where your employees want to refer other people, okay? And then make sure that they know about the referral program and know how it benefits them and it benefits the team. Going back to what Joe said earlier, you know, when he was talking a little bit about his experience, maybe, and I'd like to know a little bit of his experience as a technician too, if he turned wrenches back in the day, and what it was like for him. But you got to make sure that it's a place that somebody wants to be at, and then provide. Oh, he was talking about the 401k. That's what they don't always know about the program. So if just like a 401k program that Joe mentioned, if the technician doesn't know about it, it means nothing to them. Same thing with the referral program. So two things: one, make sure that you have a good referral program, and then also make sure that you're in a place where people want to refer. Organically, they want to refer people. It's an easy sell. It's not a hard push to have them pick up some of those friends that may be at competing dealerships or competing shops.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question, Joe. I mean, what's changed since you were recruiting, say, 50% tax, 50% salespeople? I mean, I know that sales per turn is hard, but in terms of it, there's a lot of turn there. But what's changed since, you know, you were attacked, but more importantly on the recruiting front, you know, as it's gotten harder on the tech side, have dealers stepped up and say, hey, maybe we need to pay more. Maybe we need to have a more robust strategy.
Well, as I started out, you know, it's because the average vehicle now is 12.6 years old, and the mileages are high. And so, and of course, they're more complicated. So if you, you know, Back to the Future, 3, 4, 5 years ago, we didn't have that big demand in fixed ops like we do now. And, you know, there's just crazy stuff going on. As an example, coming up soon, a lot of the alignments that are coming up with the newer cars with lots of ADAS, they're going to have to do an ADAS check on an alignment. So that's pretty much going to be like a $700 customer pay deal just to align your vehicle. And, you know, there's just all sorts of stuff that's coming through that's like that. And so that's where the big change has switched from sales to recruiting. And that's why it's so important, like I said, to go tap that resource of all these Jiffy Lube, Valvoline, Walmart people who are all coming through, girls and guys both. They've got the experience. They like the business. They're enthusiasts on cars. And yet, you know, they kind of get bypassed. Nobody really pays much attention because they all want those A and B techs. So,
So was that when you were, what years ago when you still had A and B tax, and there was more of them out there based on demand? Has that changed how dealers are going to compensate them? Is that a better way to attract and retain, or what do you think?
Well, Larry and I have bounced this back and forth 2 or 3 times, which is that there are dealers that understand the profit and fixed ops, and then there's the dealers that don't. And more of them are finally realizing this, but a lot of them still feel that every technician should be production and money on the floor. And that's why the flat rate is so hard. And then, of course, the recalls are growing like a summer hurricane, and they're getting cut back more and more. So it's really a tough balance in all of that.
Larry, do you want to comment on compensation for techs on retaining them? I mean, you recruit a lot of techs. You are muted.
He's muted.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to jump in. Anyway, Stephanie, when we're talking about training, we're talking about dealers, we're talking about retention. Obviously, if you listen to techs, you get creative in terms of how to pay them. You look at all kinds of different things. But since you're in the training side, do you feel that, the training is part of the problem as to why people aren't retained? I mean, I was talking to a gentleman in sales, and he's been with the same company 8 years, and the reason he's leaving is nothing to do with the company. He just feels they're not listening to him or training him or giving him opportunities. What do you think?
I think that's huge. I mean, again, it's going back to that whole employee experience, right? And setting that the culture that you're wanting people to stay. And one incredibly easy way to get people to stay is to have a career path and a learning and development growth path for people. I mean, if you tap a technician and say, you know what, you're doing a great job at what you're doing now, I think you should elevate and learn how to be a master technician, or you should be a shop foreman, and I'm going to put you on a career path to help you get there. Not saying that you have to do that immediately, just knowing that you've been tapped on the shoulder to say, hey, in the future, in the next 6 to 8 months, I'm going to put you into this program. If that's a desire of mine, why would I leave? I'm going to stay because I want to go through that program. I want to be a shop foreman. This environment thinks that I'm great, and they value me and they appreciate me that much that they're going to put me through this program, something I don't have to pay for, and this is going to elevate me in my career, and I'm going to grow and develop. It's huge. It's a huge, huge opportunity. And I think some dealerships really get it, and they understand that. And they understand it to the point where they don't just look at, when you're going to trade schools to go grab people, that you're not just grabbing people, but you're understanding that it's just not about recruiting, but it's about growing and developing people and continuing that education, just not grabbing them out of a trade school and throwing them into your shop, but also continuing on with their learning and their growth. There's some dealerships that are doing an excellent job at doing that, but it really does go back to leadership. It starts with leadership. Leadership has to understand that, and they have to understand before spending another dollar recruiting, talk to your technicians, ask your current technicians, one simple question: what would make you stay here for the next 5 years? Just ask that question. You'll get the answer that you need, and then actually act on those answers. Don't just ask the questions. Don't just have some great little motivational poster up in your break room. Like, actually act on those answers. And most retention problems aren't mysterious. People aren't holding the secret. They're like, I'm not going to tell leadership what makes me happy. I want to leave. Nobody wants to leave. They want to stay. They want to make more money. They want to grow. They want to develop. So people usually will tell you exactly what's frustrating them. They'll share with you what they want, what they need, and all we have to do is listen. And then, also I just want to add, I'm sure most dealerships would rather improve retention by like 10% than increase recruiting by 20%, right? I mean, it's just ask the questions, listen, give people what they need. A lot of learning and development, not just for the technicians, but I think leadership, I think they would benefit too, in understanding the importance of cultivating a culture of growth and development.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great to ask people why they're staying versus why they're leaving after they've already decided to leave? I mean, I think that would be, instead of an exit interview, maybe it's like, why are you staying interview? What can we learn from that to apply to our other employees so they don't leave? I mean, I thought that's really interesting, especially when you look at some of the turn rates or retention rate problems in automotive in general. But I mean, what do you think, Aric?
Well, I think, I was talking to a really good friend of mine who's a technician, and I asked him, I said, hey, what are 2 things, if there were 2 things that would make you never want to leave the dealership? And he gave me 3, but I'll give you the first 2. Then the third one's anecdotal to me, but he said, number 1, it's money. And we've talked about that. You got to pay. I mean, when Joe comes out and gives the stats, the actual numbers on what a technician is earning versus what someone else in another market is earning, or another job description, that's a tough pill to swallow. And we need to actually look ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, do we spend more for these guys so that they'll retain? Because in the trades, we need to make sure that we're competitive within those other trades. If we're not, then we have to have that honest discussion first. Secondly, he said the most important thing to him was education and investment in education. He said out of all the places that he worked, my shop was one of those, and all the places that investing in his education was the most important thing to him, so he could continually learn, continually grow. And we had several different nameplates as FOD, and I would just sign him up across several different nameplates and allow him the opportunity to learn wherever he wanted to learn. And then when he would accomplish those, his compensation would go up. And the reason it would go up is because there was a clear defined path within our dealership that if you got to level, I'm going to go backwards, C, or from D to C to B to A, and you passed an ASE, you got another $2 per hour. And everyone knew and understood that. It wasn't like you had to be friends with the manager to get that raise. You just had to complete the training that we were going to support you in. And so those 2 things, education, training, and money, are the 2 most important things. And then he said, well, also AC. Because if there's AC, I'd never leave. If there's air conditioning in the shop. And I think that's somewhat anecdotal, but going back to what Stephanie says, you have to listen to them. And maybe that's an important thing, and as a shop owner, you're like, well, that's ridiculous. AC, how much does that cost? Well, hey, again, going back to spending the 10% to retain somebody versus the 20% to recruiting, trust me, that's a good investment, because you can have that opportunity for those referral programs where say, hey, my shop has air conditioning. Does yours? Because when it's 100 degrees outside, and I know it's the summertime, when it's 100 degrees and that car comes in, it's 140, 150 degrees underneath that car. It is hot.
Oh yeah.
And it is super hot. And we did all kinds of cool things, like maybe do, ice cream and pops for the technicians, and make sure they're keeping cool. And there's breaks and everything that you're mandated to do. But I'm talking about going above and beyond that. But what a referral program you have to say, hey, I have an air conditioned shop, especially in the summertime. You won't have a problem recruiting technicians with something like that. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was working with a Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram dealer in Orlando, and they had 2 shifts. They had a day shift and a night shift. Night shifts for diesel techs, and they had possibly the dumbest use of what would I say? What they thought was a pro cooling the technicians down idea, which actually warmed them up more, which was big ass fans literally on the ceiling of the shop, blowing the hot air down on the technicians in the shop. And I'm like, not only are you paying for that, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what are you doing there? Like, it didn't make any sense to me, but I mean, someone thought that was a great idea. So I think a lot of it is common sense. I mean, when you look at all the stuff a dealer can do, what do you think the thing is that they should do first? Why don't you start, Peter?
The thing they need to do first, they need to make the decision that's what they want to do. And I loved what Stephanie said about the technician career path. Put together a path. It's not rocket science, okay? And I love what Al said. Say, here, you're going to start here. You're going to be a D-Tech. You're going to go through this training. You're now going to become a C-Tech. You're going to get a raise, okay? You keep doing it. We're going to do another training, get a little more raise. You're going to work your way up. Have an apprentice program. You got to start from the top. It's not something very difficult to do, but Stephanie hit the nail right on the head. You've got to give them a plan. These are young kids. They're coming out of tech school. They don't know what they're doing. Joe was talking about They don't know what a 401k is. Educate them. Show them, hey, look, if you do this, this, and this, we're going to pay you this. It's not who you know, what you know, you're going to earn it, but they actually can see a future. Now all of a sudden they say, wait a second, I'm going to stay with this company because number one, they're taking good care of me, they're treating me well, and I know that in 5 years, I'm going to be making X amount of dollars if I do these couple things. Give them a plan. Everybody wants a plan. You got to give them a little bit of a roadmap. They're still young kids, okay? We've got to help and mentor them. And like Joe said, train them, share this information with them. I think they're back there and they're wandering around half the time. They don't really know where they're going.
Yeah. What do you think, Joe? I mean, obviously there's a bunch of technicians out there that maybe don't turn wrench anymore, but could be brought in to help the technicians, even if they're not providing a more thorough training session. I mean, what's your thought on that kind of stuff? What should dealers do first?
Okay, so I'm going to step on a pedestal of being a technician, and I'm going to step on a pedestal of me being a fixed ops manager for years and years as well. So first of all, as a technician, not everybody has the ability to be able to go in upper levels. Therefore, over here on the pedestal as a fixed ops director, what I did is I would bring in each individual technician and talk with them and say, how do you feel about what you're doing? Do you want to start learning more skills, etc.? Some of them, and a lot of them said no. And here's some of the reasons why. And the technicians that are listening in will sit there and say, boy, is he hitting it right, which is they watch the masters and they get all the crappy work. And then sometimes they get a ticket and there's all this hard work and they say, by the way, all the recommendations are here for all this maintenance work. And the next thing you know is, okay, well, that goes over there to the guys that are the C and D because, it costs less to do that. And so there's a lot of times that even though you want to talk to them about paths, they're smart enough to recognize they'd rather just turn lots of hours. And if you go on YouTube and you start watching some of the YouTube guys in dealerships, they'll tell you, they'll go, I've seen how those poor masters get treated, or, the B-level guys and so on. So, that's an important part. The other thing is that you can't slay all of their dragons. So they're going to have certain complaints that you just have to listen to, and you have to work with them and say, let's talk about this and see what we can do. But, not everybody is going to want to be much more than a C-level person. And that's one of the things that if you want to try to get more of those people, you have to build your shop into it.
Interesting. Stephanie, what do you think dealers should do first?
Well, I think these are all really great points, Joe. That's a great point. And again, it's going back to like what Aric was saying. Spend the time taking them out to dinner, talking to them, listening to them, asking them the right questions, because then you will figure it out. You will figure out who wants to be a leader, who doesn't want to be a leader, or if they're happy even. Just knowing that they're happy, or what can I do to make you happy? You want to stay in your position? Great. What else do you need? What do you want? More training? Do you need better tools? Do you want AC? The AC thing just floors me. I'm in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and it's like 105 degrees, like in the summertime. So I can't even imagine working in a shop without AC, but I know I've seen it. I know it happens. But I mean, the bottom line is this, like, we know that they're talented. We know that they're talented. We also know that a lot of that attrition is happening in that first 6 to 12 months, people who are entering into the dealership. And then there's also, like I think, Joe, you mentioned, there's a lot of people who are aging out. The question is whether dealerships are creating environments where talented people want to build a career, because you need to fill those gaps. And in order to fill those gaps long-term and to sustain technicians, is you need to have the right environment. And dealerships that I think are going to win over the next decade won't simply just hire the best technicians. They're going to become the place that technicians want to work and want to stay. And I think that all boils back down to finding out what people need. I think there's probably some dealerships. I just did a workshop at the Women in Automotive conference this past weekend, and there was so many people that it was a leadership workshop, and there were so many leaders saying that they have like 5 generations of people in their dealership. That is a lot of different types of people that want a lot of different types of things. There's people that are motivated by well-being. I don't want to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. Some people that want money. There's some people that want extra days off work. So you have to find out what your people want. It just boils down to creating an environment that is one that fosters growth and gets rid of the attrition. I mean, our industry is riddled with attrition. It's like a $20 billion a year problem. And it's not just dealership. It's not just a dealership problem. It's a whole industry problem, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity out there. We just have to create those proper environments, listen to our people, and that'll solve most of the problems.
Hey, thanks for that. Larry, you want a final thought? You got a minute or two.
Sure. You know, I train as well as recruit, and I kind of wish my recruiting days were over, that people would stay in their jobs, but if they're not initially trained right, if they're not welcomed, if they're not onboarded properly and nurtured, they're going to keep you real busy.
Thanks for that, Larry. Aric,
that's where I'm firm. Larry, I'll help you.
We'll talk later.
Yeah.
Aric, any final thoughts?
Just what's been said before, roadmap. First, decide you're going to do it, get a roadmap to do it, and have that one pager that shows what the job description or what the job growth looks like. And if you can show that career path to that technician, that's game changing for them, and introduce it to them early, show them where they can be in 5, 10, 15 years, and how continuing and sticking with you is going to promote them, right? They're going to be the benefactor of it. So, but you got to decide you're going to do it, and then the roadmap is going to hold both you, the dealership, and the employee accountable for the same thing.
And don't miss the show next week. We're talking about websites, the current state of websites. And if you haven't already bought your ticket for CX 2026, we're going to be there live, Peter and I. And that's in Detroit in September 28th to 30th. And Peter, maybe you have some final thoughts there.
Final thought is really simple. Take and train the people you have. You already have people working there. You've got porters, lot boys, D-level. Take some time, focus on those people. They're already on your team, and give them a career path. Help them grow in the dealership. The guests that we had on the show today was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. It was very informative and really appreciate it. But listen and just think about some of the stuff they talked about. Build the people you have, but also go back to the people that are there at a lower level even. Just maybe lot boys. Give them an opportunity. They're already on your payroll. Give them a future to be surprised at what they'll do if they're happy there.
Fantastic. And if you want information on CX, if you look up CX Auto 2026, all one word, you can get those details. And thanks very much to everybody for taking the time today. We appreciate it. And for everyone watching with the input, we will be doing a show with technicians and what they have to say on this topic, because it sounds like there's lots of interest in that point of view. Have yourself a great week. Thanks for watching.
You as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping the industry get better today live.